Okay, so as the Pear Deck is loading, just to give you guys a little information about myself, so we are in the visual literacy session. We're going to be talking about how to use like comic books, graphic novels, cartoons, and various things in a gen ed classroom. So my name is VanGilder. I am a 6th grade teacher in St. Mary's, Kansas. I teach at the public school, not the private school that's there. This is my 7th year teaching. I spent 2 years in Oakley, Kansas. I taught 5th grade science or social studies and ELA. All right, hold on. I'm going to do this. Okay, so if you guys go to join PD, it won't show up big. Okay, join PD. It's TTPZM. I'm going to get mine. I didn't realize how fast I could walk across campus still. So I haven't had to do that for a while. All right. Let me know. Whoops. That's not what I want. I want this. Whoops. I do not have this in the right spot. Okay. I don't want you guys to see the presenter mode. This was working when I used this at school the other day. So, all right. There we go. Come on, I know I have it. Okay, so apparently this isn't going to work the way that I wanted it to. Okay, we'll just go through it this way. I think it should work for you guys all the same. All right, so again, I apologize for if I got here on time like I planned on it, I wouldn't be so chaotic. Okay, so here's just kind of some information about myself. If you guys need to get a hold of me, my email is on here. My Twitter is up here as well. I tend to keep my Twitter up to date with education stuff. I just added an Instagram, and I'll add it to this later. But I'm a mom of 2 boys. They're awesome. One's 4. He'll be 5 here in a couple weeks or a couple months, and then I have a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old. Riley and Joseph, I always like to brag about my boys. They're pretty awesome. And then my husband is actually the director of IT at Manhattan Christian College, just right over here across the street. We're a pretty techie family. It's kind of what we do in our house. If you ask us to name how many devices we have, we can't count them on our fingers or our toes. So I want you guys to give me an idea right now. How comfortable are you understanding visual literacy? So you guys should be able to drag a dot. There's an icon down here. You should be able to drag it and put it in your location of where you think you fit on visual literacy. I know plenty, but I want to learn more. I'm a little unsure, and then stop. I don't know anything about it. I'll give you guys a little bit to think about that. Right, are we all in? Right. See where we're at. Show. Okay, so we've got kind of everybody all the way across. That's good. So we're at a starting point. We're going to work through, and hopefully the goal is for everyone to be over here on the green dot as we get through this presentation. All right. So I'm going to start us off with kind of a short video. I use videos a lot in my classroom. This is how I feel a lot of my kids understand. If I don't know a concept super well, I actually pull up YouTube and can I find it online and use it with my kids. That's not the one that I wanted. All right. But if you look at ISTE, visual literacy is defined as the ability to understand, interpret, and evaluate visual messages. So we're going to pull up this YouTube video. I did say that we didn't need sound, but by the way, if you've never actually made anything with Pear Deck, I highly recommend it. I just did a project with my kids the other day using Pear Deck, and they absolutely loved it. It's super user-friendly. The kids are able to create different messages without having to have the cognitive overload that sometimes comes with using Google Slides. It kind of limits them on what they can put on a different page. So basically, visual literacy is the literacy of how we read what we see, whether it's words, pictures, color. How many of you, when you let your kids go loose on a project, they just put everything but the kitchen sink in that project all at once? Okay, that's something that we have to teach them, is how to actually put together something and tell them, how does music help with getting your message across? If it's like that video, and they have like a hardcore, intense music, is that going to make a big difference? Music is huge in my family. My boys, they're 4 and 3. They already know the differences between like soft and calm music versus like an intense kind of music. We're a musical family. We were both in marching band here at K-State. My father-in-law is a band teacher. So like we've had music in our lives forever. And so that plays into presentations. So I want you guys to look at this. This is a fairly good quote. It's fairly common. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Okay, I'm a third grader. I have no idea who Albert Einstein is. How am I supposed to know anything about this? Okay, so yes, this is a great quote, and you could use it for a third grade class. You could use it for a high school class. But, come on. There we go. Now look at it, the quote. If you're a student, I want you guys to select right now, which would be your first choice, A or B? Which would you rather see on our presentation? We'll actually show your guys' responses as we go. Looks like most of you are choosing the picture with Albert Einstein. Why? Why did you pick that one?
The picture draws your eye in.
Okay, the picture draws your eye in. It has visual interest.
They may have seen that person before.
They may have seen that person before and didn't actually know who it was. How many of you have ever seen Mr. Peabody and Sherman? It's a common one in our house. Albert Einstein's in it. Oh, look, I'm making a connection to something that I've seen in pop culture. It's making a connection with me. Oh, I know that he's this really smart guy that was in this movie. Okay, maybe I want to learn more about it. All right. So, when we talk about visual literacy, you guys are better able to reach the needs of all learners when you take into consideration all the different visual literacies. Students with disabilities are able to participate in general ed classrooms. When you add pictures, when you add these different kinds of things, when you add these different scaffolding models, those kiddos with learning disabilities are able to be in the gen ed class. And then according to Tech News, about 30% of students are visual learners. And then there are some things that you guys are already doing in your classroom that are meeting the needs of your students, that you're using visual literacy. Like graphic organizers. How many of you use graphic organizers? How about graphic notes, like doodle notes, or notes with pictures and diagrams? How about analyzing text and using different colors to write and color with? I have one project where we do doodle notes in my classroom. The only thing I allow them to use is a marker. And that's all that I have out on the tables. And I encourage them to color as we're going through the lesson. And then we got graphic novels. I love the use of graphic novels. If you guys don't know what graphic novels are, there's kind of a synopsis for you. It's basically a comic book in a novel form. You can use it to teach dialogue. You can use it to teach kids how to visualize as they read. I have one kiddo that's, she's a 6th grader. Fantastic girl, love her to pieces. But in 3rd grade, she had her mom die. She was already behind in 3rd grade. She was at 2nd grade reading level. Well, as a 6th grader, she's still at that 2nd grade reading level. We've got her to love reading because we've just been showing her graphic novels. Because she's able to read the text, and then she doesn't have to worry about visualizing as she's reading. So it enables those kids that cannot visualize the pictures as they read to be able to read like their peers. Sometimes they also struggle to comprehend what is happening in the text. And these students focus too much on decoding the words rather than actually understanding the story. Reluctant readers are often between the ages of 7 and 18. How many of you, or 7 and 16? How many of you teach kids that are between 7 and 16? You guys have some reluctant readers in your classroom, right? Kids who are like, do I have to read? I don't want to get AR. Like, come on, this is boring. Well, graphic novels are a way to grab those kids in. You can get their interest. Graphic novels I mean, they're fun. I have one up here. There's lots of pictures. You can also use them with your advanced kids. You can challenge them. You can use graphic novels as a starting for a writing activity. Maybe you go through and you read a short graphic novel and say, okay, now I want you to continue the story with your own pictures. I want you to take this the next step further. Can you turn this graphic novel into an actual book? Okay? I even have some kids who absolutely love the Percy Jackson series. But if I was to give them this book and said, okay, I want you to read this, they would stare at me like I have 6 heads, like, really? I can't read this. But they want to read what their peers are reading. So I give them the graphic novel. They can keep up with their peers. They can read it with them. They understand the same story. I've even had a kid who took an AR test on the actual book that read the graphic novel and got 100%. It follows the story almost exactly the same, but without the extra language that's in it. So right now, there's a question to ask for you. How would you guys use graphic novel in your content area or in your classroom? Just want a general idea of how you guys might use those.
Where do you find graphic novels now?
You can find them at local libraries. If you guys go on Scholastic, you can even search just like graphic novel itself. I know our librarian has been awesome, and she's really working towards getting a large library of them. We have like 2 full shelves in our library that are just graphic novels.
I have the set of Amulet. Have you
Uh-huh.
heard of that?
My kids love those.
That is so popular
Yeah.
right now.
I even have some that are Japanese novels, and they start and go right to left, which is kind of fun. And we've had that conversation about how different cultures read differently. All right, so let's
Spell
Amulet.
Amulet.
AMULET. And it's a book series. I think there's 6 of them.
Yeah, and I think they're writing more.
Right. They're
Yeah.
coming out with one every 3 or 4 months.
Is there some you recommend for kindergarten, first grade?
My boys read them. There's all sorts of them. The problem, like, sometimes with, like, those really little kids is, like, you have to sit there and read it with them and, like, point at the picture. Like, when I read with my boys, I'm like, okay, so here's so-and-so, and we've talked about, like, this is Captain Underpants. My boys love Captain Underpants, and I'm like, so Captain Underpants is saying this. Oh, now they're moving over here. Look, what's he doing? Oh, he's flying? Oh, that's awesome. Like, in helping them visualize. So, I mean, honestly, if you really wanted to, if you had a kid that was interested in this, if you sat with them and pointed like picture to picture and had them tell you what's going on, they could do it.
And what's the name of
This one is Sea of Monsters from Percy Jackson. It's the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. So it looks like, okay, so we've got some people who have used them. Good. I like to use this because I like to go back through later and then see how you guys use them. And you guys can save this when we're done, and you can actually go back and reference and see what everyone else in this session has put for these different questions. I think it's a great resource. By the way, if you've never used Pear Deck, it's pretty awesome. All right, so now we're going to look at political cartoons. Okay. I kind of like this one. Science versus public opinion. Exhibit A. Are you crazy? Polls show that 79% of people say it's flat. Now what's he going to tell us? Or now next he will be telling us about climate change. So just looking at this picture, who do you think this is? Using our knowledge of history. Columbus, right? And he's talking to the people in Spain. They're saying, you're crazy. The world's flat. You can't sail around it. Do we need to know that historical context in order to understand this political cartoon? Do we necessarily need to know it?
Helps.
It helps.
It gives it another level of meaning.
Right. But we wouldn't necessarily need to know it. There we go. And here's the thing with political cartoons. They're often deceptively simple. You look at it, it's like, oh, okay, there's one meaning. They're talking about Christopher Columbus and the world being flat. Okay, great. That's all I've analyzed. That's all the further I'm going to go. but really it's a window on current events. They're using a historical time period to explain a current event. Could we use this in today's world? Talking about science and how people maybe aren't taking scientists seriously about the changes that are happening. It also asks the reader to identify similarities and differences within it. You have to infer, you have to figure out the consequences, and you have to figure out the relationships within it. Now, as a teacher, you need to help students identify first their emotional response with it. Because as you're reading this, would you have an emotional response to it? Sometimes, some of you would, depending on the political cartoon. And then you have to model how to think about the cartoon. How can you reflect on what else could be coming across in this political cartoon? We're going to skip the question for this one, because we've already talked about that one. So I'm going to have us do one here in this next one. So when you guys are looking, you guys are going to observe the document's features, you're going to use your prior knowledge, you're going to speculate about the cause and consequences, you're going to make a personal connection, and then you're going to use evidence to support it. Technology is great. I love it. All right, so here's our political cartoon. I want you guys to tell me, you can either verbally tell me or you can type it in there, what's happening in this political cartoon.
Space of discovery.
What is happening here? Maybe what questions could we ask about it? Responses. Okay, I like that first one. Our space program is becoming old and deteriorated. Okay, space science has been put on the back burner and is no longer a top priority. Okay.
Submit in this. I write it, but how do you accept?
I think it should automatically submit. I think.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay. Does anyone want to verbally say maybe what they're seeing or what they think some questions could be? So what is this, first of all? It's a space shuttle. Which one? It's Space Shuttle Discovery. How many of you know that there are 5 space shuttles? And the 2 that actually exploded were sister ships. Did you guys know that? Okay. I teach science, and so this is something that we're getting ready to talk about. Every day I do this day in history, and I pull up like the top thing and we talk about it. We've already talked about the Columbia and Challenger shuttles. We've actually had this conversation, but I think with my 6th graders, I should have shown them this. So what is up with Space Shuttle Discovery right there? He needs lots of repairs. What's he sitting in? A wheelchair. Usually when we see someone sitting in a wheelchair, we think that maybe there's some sort of disability, right? I mean, that's where our mind goes. It's got the glasses, the blanket over his lap. So this you could use to talk about with your kids. Maybe ask these questions. Has the shuttle program become too obsolete and dangerous to continue? Does the space program need a new goal, such as manned missions to Mars? Do we need to move on past our shuttle programs? Would current space missions be better accomplished through unmanned, remotely controlled space flights? That could be something you can talk about. This cartoon actually came out in 2005, after the Columbia exploded on re-entry in 2003. So that was when they were really looking at that space shuttle program and should we continue with our shuttle programs. But having the picture kind of draws a whole new meaning to it. And then if you guys want to find some really good political cartoons, there's a couple websites here. It's in the handout that I've given you, along with, it'll be in this presentation when we're done. All right. So now, picture books. This is something I use all the time with my kiddos. I have 4 up here. So I have Hooray for Diff and Doofer Day. Has anyone ever read this one? Okay, I read this to my 6th graders every March. Why would I read it to them in March? What's coming up? That would almost be correct. State assessments are coming up in March and April. This is one of the last books written by Dr. Seuss. It was actually finished by Jack Perleski and Lane Smith. And it goes through and talks about how they have this big test coming up. And the kids are super worried because it's like, what if our school gets shut down because we don't meet the scores? And then we have to go to dreary old, let me see, where's dreary old Flobber Town? Where everyone walks the same, does everything the same. It's boring there. We don't want to go there. And my kids always relate it to our rival school, which they're great. Rossville's great. So they're concerned that they're going to go to dreary old Flobber Town. But the teachers in the book say, oh no, you'll do fine. We've taught you how to think. And so it goes through the whole, like, just relax. You can do this. And it's kind of like a build-up. We're actually going to turn this book into a skit this year and perform it for our kids before they go and do state assessments, trying to get them kind of up and excited. We also have this one here. I would use this one if I was teaching like a modern U.S. history course. It's Marvin K. Mooney, Will You Please Go Now? What do you guys think this would relate to? How about Richard M. Nixon, Please Go Now? This came out about the same time that Nixon was going through the impeachment process. It wasn't written for that intent, but political activists changed it to fit that message. We also have We the Kids for American history. It goes through page by page, talks about the different lines of the preamble of our Constitution. You could even turn this into a lesson where you have the kids illustrate each individual part. You could even use this with an upper grade kids. Because, I mean, how many of us, we can say the preamble, but we don't actually know, like, what some of the words mean. And then this one, I thought this one was kind of fun. It's called The Inconvenient Alphabet. I just got this one from the Reading Circle this year. And it talks about why our word, like, it talks about the creation of the Webster Dictionary. You have Ben Franklin and Mr. Webster here, and they go through and they try and, like, change the words, like, no, we've got, both men wanted words written like how they sound. Like, right should be right, R-I-T. Like, and so they go through, like, the whole process there. Well, I have a collection of books here, and since tomorrow is Dr. Seuss's birthday, they're all Dr. Seuss books. So what I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to spread these out, and I want you guys to look over it really quick with the person that you're sitting next to and try and tell me what political message is being expressed in it. And some of them are obvious, others not so obvious.
Yeah, it's been well.
And you don't have to necessarily read it, just kind of quickly flip through it. Dr. Seuss is great for using this with high school age kids or middle school age kids.
I'm sorry. You're good.
Alright, I'm going to give you guys maybe one more minute to flip through your book. And the first one I'm going to start with is Cat in the Hat. You guys do have Cat in the Hat. That one has a lot deeper meaning than what you think it probably does. We're going to end with the war ass. That's a good one. Alright. right, so we're going to start with Cat in the Hat. So what message do you think is being portrayed in Cat in the Hat?
Well, at the beginning, you could say you can either sit and be bored or you can get up and do something about it.
Okay,
So you could be involved or
okay,
not involved.
okay. If you look at the story as a whole, it kind of shows, if I clicked on that button, we'll double check. It does have that, it does have meanings throughout the whole story. But the cat in this book, in Cat in the Hat, actually represents a dictatorial power. How many of you would see that the cat represents a dictatorial power? Doesn't he tell the kids exactly what to do and when to do it? And he kind of tears up the house in the process and doesn't really care. Okay? He makes a mess, then can't clean it up and asks for help from the kids or our working class. And then he realizes, like throughout the book, you realize the need for a democracy, kind of towards the end. Right, yeah. There's even a true picture. What about Horton hears a who?
We said that maybe there's lots of voices out there, people, opinions out there, but we block them out or don't see them.
Okay.
Or even from the other alternative, like prior to an election, and there's all these opinions, but we don't really believe in them until after election, after they've been
Right.
noticed.
Awesome. This one also focuses on the power of the powerless. It focuses on the powerless. Kind of like how you were explaining, like there's all these voices, there's these different opinions, but you don't really listen to them. And then it also talks about conformity. Don't the people try and get Horton to just destroy the flower because there's no one on it? Be like us. Don't hear voices in your head. That's not right, you know. And then we got Yertle the turtle. This one's kind of fun. Who has Yertle the turtle? Okay, what do you think it's got?
Similar to Cat in the Hat with like dictatorial power.
Dictatorial power,
Also
yeah.
maybe the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Okay.
Turtle on the bottom is just stuck there.
Can anyone think of a war where we deal with a dictatorial power? Have you guys heard of World War II? Okay. Yeah, it was in the news like a while back. So a lot of people use this book. They compare Yertle the turtle to Hitler, and it talks about his rise and fall, and it focuses on how all creatures should be free. He basically builds a giant throne out of all the other turtles, so he can sit at the top. What about the Sneetches?
That was us. Go ahead.
Okay.
So we were just talking about like, you know, like accepting people for being different, and like we even like could even go farther because like this duck has a star on him, and so we were like that could even be like more of like the Nazis and the Germans and stuff. So
Okay.
I mean, you could go kind of deep into some of it.
You could. This one definitely talks about anti-discrimination and anti-racism. And then you could also pull in, this would be another one that you could pair with Yertle the Turtle if you're doing a lesson on World War II. What about the Butter Battle Book? Oops, as it shows it.
We thought maybe the Berlin Wall.
Okay, it does mention the wall in there. This kind of deals with the dangers and implications of the Cold War. And you do have the Berlin Wall, the Iron Curtain going on at that time. What about the Lorax?
Lots of possibilities there. With
Right.
Conservation and pollution,
Mhm.
consumerism, just, the stuff of the wanting to
Right.
kill trees and.
Yes. This one Dr. Seuss actually wrote at the start of the environmental movement, and it deals with the effects that we have on our environment. My physics teacher in my senior year read this book to us as seniors. He even like dressed up for it on the day, and he wore like his own scarf and different things. And so that was, to me, that was really engaging and memorable. I still remember it after graduating many years ago. So we have our math picture books. These are good ones that you can use. Math Curse. This is probably one of my favorite ones to read. I read it with my 6th graders. We go through and we solve the math as we're reading the book. Money Math is really good for talking about presidents, and then how you can relate it to the money and adding that. The Circumference series is really good. I love the Dragon of Pi because it kind of explains why, like you have the radius is half the diameter, and the diameter is the full distance across the circle through the middle. And then there's just another series of alphabet books. I actually use these with my kids. By the way, if you've never checked out P is for pterodactyl, check it out, because it's pretty hilarious. They all deal with silent letters at the beginning of the word. How many of you actually knew that pterodactyl started with P? Because I didn't. But I use these books with my kids for our ancient China unit that we do every year. Instead of doing an end of unit test, they create an alphabet book. They do like S is for Silk Road, and then they have to give me 2 to 3 paragraphs explaining what is the Silk Road. So they seem simple, but you can actually take it this step further. If you flip through, like S is for sunflower, it says like R is for rivalry. And then it talks about Kansas State and KU and the 2 universities there. And then we have comic strips. My kids love comic strips. Again, this kind of goes along with the graphic novel theme. It's great for retelling concepts in a few words. If you have kids that struggle with summarizing, so you give them a passage and say, okay, now I need you to summarize it. Most of your kids will probably write it in like 1 to 2 sentences, kind of tell you the baseline. But if you give them like maybe a 4-window comic strip and tell them, okay, summarize this in these 4 sections, and a main idea or a key detail needs to be in each section, and then you can take it from there and then consolidate it into a paragraph. You're scaffolding that summarization process for them. You're making it like, oh, I'm summarizing, but I don't really realize that I'm summarizing as I go through. I was always surprised at how few of my kids actually knew how to write a summary sentence or how to write things in that sense. You can also use this to teach concepts in your class, like if you're teaching about, like, I'm trying to think of a concept that we just did recently, like about the Peloponnesian Wars. You could tell it in a comic strip kind of sense. It's a war that took over like 30 years between Athens and Sparta, but the main ideas could be summarized in a short comic strip. And then these are links to different areas where kids can actually create the comic strips. We're going to try and get through here. Okay. We're going to skip this video just for time's sake. We're almost done. But basically, digital storytelling is where you use computer-based skills to tell a story. When you're doing digital storytelling, you need to make sure that you focus on cognitive overload. Don't put too many words, too many pictures, too many colors on one slide. Also look at volume. Most of these digital storytelling devices or websites allow you to add sound to your story. You can also add audio, so if you want to talk over it. So you talk with the kids about if you have a background volume, should it be as loud as your talking volume? How do you adjust that? And then you always have to ask your kids, when is too much? I'll go around as they're working on these projects and ask them, is there too much on this? If you are having this in 5 seconds and I sit here and read it, am I going to be able to read everything that you have on your screen? So it really gets them thinking about the creating process. And then here are some different resources. You have Powtoon, that's one of my favorites to use with my kids, and it's easy to upload. You can upload it straight to YouTube, or you can actually download it as a PowerPoint, which is how I have my kids do it, so that way they're not using their school account on YouTube. Storybird, Canva, there's Pictochart, and then there's this resource here, which is on the back of the handout that has 18 different free resources that you guys can use that can help with digital storytelling. If you get time later, I would check this out. How many of you know who George Lucas is? Okay. He's big in Star Wars. He goes through and talks about how high school should require a digital literacy course. We require an English course for our kids. We should also require a digital literacy course. Teach them how to decipher what they read, what they see, what they're overloaded with every day. And it's well worth the 5 minutes to watch it. So right now, I want you guys to scale on this 4-point scale. Where do you fit within this with utilizing visual literacy in your classroom? If you already do, you're probably a green. I'm just curious where everyone kind of fits. Okay? And then the last one, if you guys want to spend like a few minutes or a minute, write the most important thing from today's presentation. What's the most important thing that you're going to take away from this presentation? And then thank you guys for coming. If you have any questions, my contact information is on the handout. It's also in this pear deck. I'd love to talk to you more about this kind of stuff. This is something that I use on a regular basis with my kids. So thank you. Have fun. Also come to K-Bait if you are free this summer, professional development.